Hi everyone, welcome back to another lesson of Russian for Beginners. My name is Fion and today we're going to be looking at the prepositional case. So this is going to be the first part in a two-part lesson. I tried to fit it all into one lesson, but there was just too much to tackle. So today we're just going to look at the basics of the prepositional case. So here we are, part one of the prepositional case. This is for those who haven't studied the prepositional case before, and we're just going to learn how to put the nouns into this case and practice with some sentences and learn some new vocabulary. So there will be lots for you to do today. Hopefully you've seen my previous lessons because I'm going to be building on that knowledge today. Here we have a more specific overview of what we're going to learn in the two parts of this lesson on the prepositional. But I'm not going to read through this just now. You can pause the video and have a look if you're interested. For now, let's just dive straight into learning the prepositional. First, let's start by talking about what a preposition is. A preposition is usually a small word which indicates where something is. So for example, the person is inside or in the house. In or inside are prepositions. The book is on the table. The preposition there would be on. So you can think of it as answering questions of where or gdzie. Gdzie moja mać? Gdzie moja mać? Where is my mother? And you would answer Она в магазине. So v means in, магазине in the shop. Она в магазине. Она в здании, she's in the building, or она на пляже. Она на пляже, she's at the beach or on the beach. So another thing is the preposition or. That has a slightly different meaning. It means about. You can use it when you're talking about something or thinking about something, and there are a few other cases when it's used as well. So мы говорим о газетах. We are talking about newspapers. Мы говорим о учителях. We're talking about teachers. Мы говорим о папе. We're talking about dad. So the prepositional case in Russian, it's not quite as straightforward as applying to all prepositions. There are about 5 prepositions that require the prepositional case. And these prepositions we're going to look at in both parts, but today in part 1 we're going to look at just 3, v, na and o. So as a non-native speaker of Russian, I would say that one of the most difficult parts of the prepositional case is trying to learn the difference between v and na. They can both mean in, which can be very confusing, and there are some rules to differentiate when v and na are used, but a lot of the time you do just have to learn which nouns take na and which take v. Because some nouns only use na, some only use v, and some can use both but with different meanings. And that's something we're going to tackle in part 2. That's kind of why I had to split up this lesson into 2 parts, because there's a lot to get through. So here are the examples. В университете. В университете, just join the v and the u. В университете, that means in the university. В спальне, в спальне. So спальня is bedroom, and because there's consonants at the beginning, you kind of pronounce the v more like an f. В спальне, в спальне. And similarly we have в музей, в музей. In the museum, в музей. So v is generally used for enclosed spaces. This is kind of like the main or one of the main rules for differentiating. And na is more often than not used for outside spaces. But there are just so many exceptions to that rule that it's almost not worth being a rule, in my opinion. But we'll go on to this later, don't worry. So here are the examples. На концерте, на концерте. And concert means concert. At the concert or in the concert, на концерте. На деревне, на деревне. Деревня means village or countryside. So на деревне means in the countryside. На лекции, Na lekcji. At the lecture or in the lecture. Lecture is lekcja. Lekcja. And I'll have a vocabulary list at the end of this lesson, so don't worry about looking these words up in their nominative cases. I'll do all that at the end. And then finally we have or, meaning about. So one really important thing to know about or is that when it is followed by a word that starts with a vowel, sorry, there are loads of rules, but you'll get the hang of it, I promise. The more you listen, the more you learn. So remember to keep up your listening practice. So when or is followed by a word that starts with a vowel, then it has a B. And this is just to make speaking clearer. A lot of the rules are just to help people to understand when you're speaking Russian. So instead of Angli, Anglia is England, you would say об Anglii. So мы говорим об Англии. We are talking about England, об Англии. Or else if the B wasn't there, then the letters might merge into one and it wouldn't really be clear what you're saying. So then there are some examples here of a politiki. Politika is politics, and it's always in the singular in Russian. You don't say a politikach, which would be the plural. It's always just a politikie. And then we've got ab istori, about history, or historia can also mean a story. And a knigge, about the book or a book. Now we're going to move on to declining nouns into the prepositional case. Thankfully, it's not too straightforward. As you can see in these three tables, if you look at the singular prepositional forms of the nouns, they all end in ye. So most nouns in the prepositional just have a ye added onto the stem. And that is the same for feminine and neuter as well. So it's quite straightforward, thankfully. The only thing to note is that if the noun ends with an I kratkaya, such as muzej, that's that little funny backwards N with a symbol over it, and then nouns ending with a soft sign, like kalendar, they change in the plural, and instead of the regular ach, prepositional plural ending, they take on yach, just because they're soft. But in the singular, it's just the ye. So that's for the masculine nouns. And here are some example sentences that we can run through to get us used to hearing the prepositional case spoken. So, я работаю в магазине. Я работаю в магазине. I work in the store. Я вижу женщину в магазине. I see a woman in the shop or the store. Мы говорим о календарях. Мы говорим о календарях. We're talking about calendars. Девочка была в музее. Девочка была в музее. The girl was in or at the museum. So now it's your turn to practice putting nouns into the prepositional case. Here we have some fill in the gaps exercises for you to do. You can pause the video and write out your answers. I'm just going to start going through them now. So, я училась, the verb учиться means to study, and it specifically means to study at somewhere, so to study at a university. Я училась, here it's the feminine past tense, я училась в университете. I studied at university as a woman. Я училась в университете. Мы были в музее. Мы были в музее. We were in or at the museum. And ящик means drawer. So газета в ящике. Газета в ящике. The newspaper is in the drawer. Они жили в городе. Они жили в городе. Город means the city or a city. Они жили в городе. Lastly, we have the phrase, it's a set phrase, идет дождь. Идет дождь. Дождь is rain. Идет means, well, here it means it's raining. Идет дождь. So, идет дождь в январе. And the stress is on the end. I'm going to write that out, the stress patterns with months, in the second part because it can be a bit confusing. So, идет дождь в январе. Идет дождь в январе. Next, we're going to look at how to decline feminine nouns into the prepositional. So it's very similar with nouns ending in a and ya. They go to ye in the singular. So we have газета and неделя, the third table down, which change to газете and неделе. For softer endings with feminine nouns, they take on a slightly different ending in the singular. They just have the e. So titräd, meaning notebook or exercise book. Titräd goes to titradi. Titradi. And it's a bit softer, titradi. And stancija, stancija, meaning station, changes to stanci. Stanci. So it's just a longer e at the end. Stanci. So in the plural, the only one that's regular will be nouns ending in a, and here we have газета, so it changes to газетах. Газетах. But all of the other endings can be considered quite soft, so they change to ях. Ях. Станциях, неделях, and тетрадях. Let's take a look at some example sentences. So, она была на станции. She was in or at the station. Вы говорите о неделе. And remember, the o is pronounced more like an a because the stress doesn't fall on it. So, вы говорите о неделе. You are talking about the week. Он писал в тетрадях. Он писал в тетрадях. He wrote in notebooks or in the notebooks. Мы говорим о политике. Мы говорим о политике. We are talking about politics. So now it's your turn to practice putting feminine nouns into the prepositional. You can pause the video, but I'm just going to start going through the answers now. So, где вы были? Where were you? Где вы были? Я был на, and just take off the a and add е. Я был на почте. Я был на почте. So you might notice that before I mentioned v is typically used for enclosed spaces, but here we have na почте. So there are just lots of exceptions to the rules. I think that one is because of some historical significance. Post offices were, I think, historically outdoors, or like mailing spots were kind of visited by horse and carriages and stuff, so something to do with that. And same with станция, that was more open-aired, I think, which is why it uses na, but it's still confusing for us. So, она теперь на, remember it takes that soft e, so она теперь на станции. Она теперь на станции. She is now at the station. Мы видели девочку на. Площадь is going to have that softer ending of e. So, мы видели девочку на площади. Remember our accusative here, девочка, goes to девочку because it's in the accusative. Видели is the past tense of видеть. So this is where having gone through the previous lessons would have been useful, hopefully. Okay, он был на улице. Он был на улице. He was in the street. Finally, мы говорим о тетради. Мы говорим о тетради. О тетради. Awesome, well done if you got those right. Let's move on. Finally, we're going to look at how to decline neuter nouns into the prepositional. So the first table is for most neuter nouns, they end in or je. And I've put the example of общество. And these regular neuter nouns will just take the normal je ending. So anything that ends in je already, such as morje, that just stays the same. Morje, v morje. So here we have общество, which goes to обществе, в обществе, meaning in society. And then in the plural, it has that regular ach ending, в обществах, в обществах, in societies. So the other two tables have softer endings. We have zdanie, meaning building, and for any noun ending in ie, it will take a softer ending of e in the prepositional, e. And then in the plural, it's iach, iach, just taking that softer ending. So zdanie goes to zdani, zdani, and zdania in the plural goes to zdaniach. Finally, imya, meaning name, imya. You may remember that vremya and all nouns ending in mya have kind of a funny declension. They sort of add these letters in, so you just add e and n to the stem. So imya goes to imeni, imeni, and if it was vremya, it would be vremeni. Similarly, if it was znamia, it would be znameni. So they all have this kind of odd conjugation that you just need to learn. So imya, imeni, imena in the plural goes to imenach, imenach. So again, this is like an exception to the exception of the rule. In imenach, it has a regular ending. It's not soft as the singular, it's regular. So imeni and imenach. Okay, hopefully you're not too overwhelmed at this point. Let's have a look at some example sentences. Мы живем в обществе. Мы живем в обществе. Ты работаешь в здании. Ты работаешь в здании. Мы видим лодки на море. Мы видим лодки на море. So лодка is a boat, лодки is boats, на море, на море. And then что времени, что времени, что времени. What's in a name? Что времени. Now we have a final fill in the gaps exercise for you to practice declining neuter nouns into the prepositional case. So you can pause the video. I'm just going to start going through the answers now. Мы сидели на солнце. So солнце means sun, and because it ends with a ye, it just stays the same. Мы сидели на солнце. We were sitting in the sun. Книга, the book. Была, was. В этом. So этом means this, and we can discuss the declension of этот in another lesson, so don't worry about that too much now. Книга была в этом месте. The book was in this place. Я вижу лодку, because that's in the prepositional. Лодка goes to лодку. На море. Again, море ends with ye already, so it just doesn't change. Я вижу лодку на море. I see a boat on the sea. Now we have quite a long sentence. Посмотрите, have a look or look. Посмотрите на прекрасное, at the beautiful, солнце, sun, w czystym, so it sounds more like a F, w czystym niebie. Небо goes to niebie. Посмотрите на прекрасное солнце в чистом небе. Well done if you got that right. Finally, мы видели его голову в окно. Oh, sorry. В окне. Мы видели его голову в окне. В окне. And again, the V here sounds like a V, not like an F, and you join it onto the O. В окне. Мы видели его голову в окне. Also, with его, the G just sounds like a V. It does this sometimes in the middle of a word. As far as I can tell, there's no fixed rule. I've tried to see if there's any patterns, but I think you just have to learn the instances where the Russian G is pronounced V, and this is one of those instances. So, мы видели его голову в окне. We saw his head at the window. So here I've just tried to gather up the rules governing the prepositional case and put them all in one place. So with the prepositional singular, you just need to remember mostly that most of the nouns add ye onto the stem. And there are only a few exceptions, starting with feminine nouns ending in ia, or soft signs which have softer endings of e instead of ye. The other exception is neuter nouns ending with mia, such as imya or vremya, and they have that funny ending of adding n onto the end, and then onto the stem, sorry, and then whatever the ending may be. So imya goes to imeni, vremya goes to vremeni, and so on and so forth. So in the prepositional plural, regular nouns will have ach on the end, so regular masculine nouns with a hard consonant at the end, regular feminine nouns with an a on the end, and regular neuter nouns with o or ye on the end. Most of the time they'll have ach endings. And then any noun with a softer ending of any gender, so if it ends with a soft sign or with a ya or with an i kratkaya, then you just take off that last letter and add yach. Yach. So no matter what the gender is, just remember if it has a soft sign, it will probably go to yach. And the exception to that is neuter nouns, which actually end in ach, even though they had a soft sign in the singular. So this is, it may be a bit overwhelming. Hopefully I've explained that well enough and it's not too confusing. It will just take time to get to know the rules, and the more you listen, the more natural it will become. So don't worry if you don't completely get it right now. This lesson we're going to look at some personal pronouns and how they decline into the prepositional. So you may remember in previous lessons we've learned these in the nominative and in the accusative. So in the nominative here we have ja, ty, on, anno, anna, muy, vui, and ani. And in the accusative it was minya, tibia, yevo, yeyo, nas, vas, and ich. So we've got some similarities. In the prepositional it's meneer, tibie, njom, nej, nas, vas, and nich. So here are some example sentences. Вы говорили о нем. Вы говорили о нем. Were you talking about him? Вы говорили о нем. Нет. Мы говорили о ней. We were talking about her. Нет, мы говорили о ней. Я думала о тебе. Я думала о тебе. I was thinking about you. So the last grammar thing I wanted to mention in this part of the lesson is the buffer vowel o, and it applies to the prepositions v and o, meaning about. So this is found when v or o come before a word that has a lot of consonants at the beginning. And it's all just about how to make it easier and clearer when speaking. So there are certain clusters of consonants such as vr, vs, ft, dn, and mn, as I've written them there. But there are also exceptions to this rule and different consonant clusters that apply in kind of rare and unique situations. So this is just a general guide, and I just wanted to introduce you to this concept because when you see v or vo, you might be confused and not realize that it's actually just the same thing. It just means in. It just means v. Similarly with oba, that just is that similar old o meaning about. Мы говорим о политике. It's the same meaning, it's just written a bit differently for clarity's sake. So here are some examples. We have во времени, and this is kind of meaning in the sense that to travel in time, to travel back in time, to go back in time. So время is a bit of a funny one with the preposition v. Sometimes it takes accusative, and we can talk about that later. So во всем means in everything. Всё means everything. Во всем. And remember the stress isn't on the o, so it's va. Во всем. Во мне, in me. Во мне. Обо мне, about me. Вы говорите обо мне. Are you talking about me? Обо мне. Finally, обо всем. About everything. Обо всем. So honestly, I have no idea why it's not о мне and о всем, because those would be just as easy to say, but this is just how it is, and unfortunately you kind of have to remember it. Обо мне, обо всем. So let's look at some sentences. So here we have some quite tricky sentences. I hope it's not going to be a bit too overwhelming. So let's start with вы сомневаетесь. So this verb сомневаетесь comes from сомневаться, which means to doubt, and that is always followed by v. To doubt somebody or to doubt something is сомневаться в, and then the person or the thing. Сомневаться в. So here, вы сомневаетесь во мне. Do you doubt me? Во мне, it's во because it's the мне, the consonant cluster, во мне. Они знают обо мне. They know, они знают обо мне. They know about me. Они знают обо мне. Мы думали обо всем. We have thought about everything. Мы думали, or we were thinking about everything. Мы думали обо всем. Обо всем. Finally, искать смысл. So искать means to search or to seek. Искать. Смысл means meaning or sense. Во всем. Во всем. Искать смысл во всем. Wonderful. So the final task that we're going to do today is just some translation practice to make sure that you have got the hang of the prepositional case. So we have, we were at the station. Мы были на станции. Мы были на станции. Now we've got quite a long one. He is talking about politics, but I like or love to talk about history. So remember, I like or love is любить, the verb любить, which would be я люблю, followed by говорить. Я люблю говорить. So the whole sentence will be он говорит о политике, но я люблю говорить об истории. And because история starts with a vowel, you just add a B onto the O to make it clearer. So quite a tricky one, very well done if you got that. They were at the museum. Они были в музее. Они были в музее. My dad was in the shop. Мой папа. Remember, papa is to all of the things surrounding it, all of the words surrounding it, it's masculine, and just intrinsically it declines as a feminine. So мой, masculine, мой папа, and then был, he was, в магазине. Мой папа был в магазине. My dad was in the shop. He wrote in the notebook. Он писал в тетради. Он писал в тетради. Тетради. You, the formal and plural version, вы сомневаетесь. Вы сомневаетесь во мне. Вы сомневаетесь во мне. Well done if you got that. Next, I know about you. Я знаю о тебе. So it's not going to be aba because there isn't that consonant cluster. It's just о тебе. Я знаю о тебе. Do you know about me? Ты знаешь обо мне. Ты знаешь обо мне. Okay, well done if you got those correct. So here's just a quick recap of all of the vocabulary that we've learned today that may be new or unfamiliar to you, depending on your level. So I've written out which gender the nouns belong to, which will hopefully help you when you come back to declining them in the prepositional case. I'm not going to read through these all just now. Hopefully you remember how to pronounce them, and don't worry too much about learning every single word. We're going to build on this as we go along. So that brings us to the end of part 1. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope it was helpful and not too overwhelming. So that was the basics, and then part 2 is going to be focusing on more specific rules and the differences between v and na, and then introducing some more prepositions. But just take some time, let that vocabulary sink in, practice writing out sentences, and most importantly, listen. So download a radio app and listen to the radio in Russian, or listen to audiobooks. And even if you don't understand what's going on, it's fine. Just slow down the speed on the video or on the audiobook and just really try to hear the words that you might know. So even if you're just listening and you hear the word v or na, then consider that a win. I mean, it takes time, but that is the absolute best way to learn a language. No matter how much I teach you about prepositions, just by learning and listening to Russian native speakers, that's the best way, That's what's going to solidify this information in your mind. So anyways, I'll let you go. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this, then you can like and subscribe. And if you have any questions or, concerns or anything, then please leave them in the comments and I'll get back to you as soon as possible. Have a great day, everyone.